Good. We're all selling this or giving it away?
Hey, we're just giving it away.
Wow.
That was actually just my personal subscription, and so I just put them up there.
That's
in
from 2
case
years
someone
ago.
wants
No
to
wonder you're
use it.
giving it away.
But hey, it's been there that long, so I'm glad somebody finally showed interest. So please, somebody can enjoy it.
Cindy, I knew yours because you just said it to Jill. So I like to show off.
I have to say with masks, it makes it so
I
much
know.
harder to remember faces and names.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
sure.
absolutely. I know, I almost stayed on Zoom, but it's like, no, get out of here.
Yeah, I forced myself to get off my phone.
When I like it in person, I just, the more this is in person, I feel like it's easier to actually run the meeting.
Is it? Yeah.
Right.
I don't really want my face to be that big.
Well, also,
I
I
know,
just
I
feel
was
like,
thinking about that when they're on Zoom.
It's like
Oh,
huge.
I don't want to.
yeah, well, to me, I feel like part of communication in running meetings is kind of reading the body language. to
Oh,
know
yeah,
when
you're
someone's
100%
done
right.
talking or when they want to talk.
Yeah, you're not.
Makes it trickier.
Howdy, welcome.
Are you running the computer?
Yeah.
Great.
Hi, Marty.
How many do we have online? Kat?
So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Hi, this is Bart. I just want to let you guys know that Jim McMaster is in Seattle. He won't be able to join us tonight, but I'll be the CPR representative.
We also have Gail here. Gail Bizot is in the house. Another one of our board members.
Dave is on his daughter-in-law.
Yes. Is Erin on yet?
Yes.
Sally. Steve is-
Here.
You're a dentist?
Okay. Well, I guess we might as well get started. I think there's enough of people on and in person, and if people show up a little bit late, they can just play catch up. So we'll go ahead and start just by taking attendance. So as I read your name, feel free to turn on your microphone so that we can hear you, because we may not see you raising your hand or waving depending on how the screens are showing up. Erin Chen. Michelle Colvin. Here. Quentin, I'm gonna say your name wrong.
Here.
Matt Dolphin. Christina Ernstrom. Alan Holstein.
Here.
Lisa Jackson. Kimberly Lanier. Lacey Mendoza. Bob Olson. Justin Patterson. I see that name up there.
Here.
Martin Peters. He raised his hand, Aaron, in case you didn't
present.
hear. Cindy Riggs,
Here.
Aaron Robinson,
Here.
Peter Sidarius, Dustin Wolf. Okay, so we didn't have quite as many people as I thought we did. Okay, so first official things, just approval of the minutes from December. So did everybody get a chance to review those? They were available online. So we just need someone to make a motion so that we can approve the minutes from last month.
I move to approve December's meeting minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. So So we're gonna jump right in with Paul, who's gonna give us a presentation on the proposed bypass trail.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Kat has asked me to put together a brief presentation, so I put together a few slides for about a 10-minute presentation and then take your questions and answers. So I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see that okay? Okay,
Oh,
so
hang on, I think I need to,
You might have to allow him to
multiple, hang on, Paul, it's on me. All right, go ahead and try again.
one sec, I have to back up.
Uh-huh.
Alrighty. One sec, this is for some reason not wanting to get started. Okay, can you see that?
Do we need to, Kat, do we need to switch to have him sharing his screen instead of seeing him as the presenter?
No, you should be able to select that on your side there. We have it on multiple.
All right, we'll do one more time with feeling and see if we get through this time.
We're coming.
All right. How about that?
There we go.
Yay.
Just
Very
needed
good.
feeling.
All right. Sometimes it takes a little patience to get through these things. Okay, so again, welcome everybody. I'm Paul Agrimis with Greenworks, and we are working with the district to implement phase 1 of the Newberg Dundee bypass trail. So I'm going to talk to you. Our team for this is Greenworks. We're leading the project. Our structural engineer is OTAC. They're also providing water resource engineering and civil engineering. GRI is our geotechnical consultant, and we have Willamette Cultural Resources for the cultural resources portion of it. So one sec here. So this is the overview map of the Newberg Dundee bypass trail. So phase 1, as you can see here, is indicated by these 2 magenta lines, which runs starting at the mill where you see that meander bend in the Willamette River, and then comes over to Highway 219. What we hope to do eventually is connect all the way to Dundee. What's really good about this first about 7,300 feet of trail is that there's already bike lanes and sidewalks on the east side of Highway 219. So adding, and that's about 9,800 linear feet. So adding this connection from the communities around the mill area will allow people to get all the way to PCC Newberg, Fred Meyer, and Providence Newberg, which would be really great in terms of mobility. And eventually, hopefully with a phase 2, we'll be able to move all the way down to Dundee, essentially using the bypass alignment to a great extent, and then veering off from that at 8th Avenue in Dundee to tie into downtown Dundee. So here, just zooming in, this is our first phase. So if we start at the left side of the image, you can see the Willamette River in the lower left-hand corner. We're connecting there on River Street, and we're picking up where ODOT left off with the 12-foot concrete path that ends just before the railroad tracks. So we're going to extend that all the way down to the 14th Avenue connection. And then we're on the alignment of the existing path. And it's not until we get to Winooski that we need to then create a new surface. And that would duck under the overpass, cross Hess Creek in the floodplain. And in this slide, when we developed the materials for the application to ODOT for the Community Pathways Program, we were showing a 670-foot bridge to not only clear the floodplain, but particularly on the west side of Hess Creek, there's wood chips or a big debris pile that we wanted to avoid. And in the process of value engineering the project, we reduced that bridge length to 525 feet. We sent our geotech team out about a month ago, and we need to go a little wider because there's wood chips in that west bank. So they're going out Friday actually to see, get a little bit more information about the extent of that wood chip pile from the old mill. But once we cross Hess Creek, then we get on the access road that ODOT built to serve their stormwater management facilities. And then we swing up onto Industrial Parkway and we come into the signalized intersection at Industrial Parkway and Highway 219. I'm going to break here for any questions, just to make sure everybody's up to speed and understands where we're at. All right, no questions, we'll keep rolling. So again, just a review of the team, working with Casey primarily, but also Kat and Don Clements. Our partner in the project is the city of Newberg. They haven't put money into the project at this point, but they are supporting us with a variety of services, including helping us with some of the land use approvals. They're annexing portions of the county that will hopefully streamline the land use process. And then Alan Thompson is our contact at ODOT, who manages the Community Pathways Program. So our team is led by Jennifer Diavanzo. She's our project manager. She's a registered landscape architect and also professional wetland scientist. On the OTAC team, we've got Ryan Mackey, and Scott Nettleton is our structural engineer. And Kanani Parasso with Willamette Cultural Resources Associates oversees the project. They've gone out, there's no cultural resources. There's been so much disturbance, it's not a surprise. And then GRI did their initial field work in November, and they are returning based on their findings of the wood chips this Friday to do some additional probes. So this is the big crossing that we need to make across Hess Creek. You can see these wetlands in the foreground, or sort of middle ground, I guess. And then this slope in the foreground is material that was moved by ODOT as part of clearing most of the wood chip pile that was here on this west side of Hess Creek, and also in creating the contours for the bridge crossing for their vehicle bridge. So we have a proposed alignment. So the dashed lines here indicate the existing ground surface, and the solid line shows the proposed profile of the trail. So the west end is where we connect at the intersection of Winooski. And you can see that follows pretty close to grade. We're going to need to fill for a little bit where there's that little belly below the surface. And then there's a big cut leading down to where the bridge abutment will be. You can see that very straight line, which is the 670-foot bridge in this image. Actually, this is a 525-foot alignment in this current profile. And then we have to do a little bit of cutting to get up the hill And then we'll resume basically the profile of the existing access road that ODOT has created to ADA standards. It's no greater than 5% and it's 14 feet wide. This may be hard to see, but anyways, it just lays out the various steps as part of our schedule for the project. And we've completed all the field studies at this point. We're about to submit the wetland delineation report to DSL for their approval. And then we'll get into completion of the 30% design, and we'll get the concurrence from DSL, Department of State Lands. We will then move forward towards a 60% design, which is basically identifying all the different features and starting to develop specifications for the project as well. And then hopefully in this summer of 2023, we'll begin construction. Any questions at this point? Okay, I'll move to the next slide, which is just to thank you for your attention, and I will stop sharing and see if there's additional questions or anything else that I can address for you tonight.
I guess one question I would have is what's the funding outlook on this? Is how much of the funding has been secured for certain phases of the project?
Yes, so for phase one, which is this 7,300 foot element or portion of the project, we're fully funded. We got a grant from ODOT for $1.8 million, and the district is putting in $800,000, and that gives us a total of $2.6 million. The breakdown is essentially $2.2 million for construction based on our very preliminary cost estimate that we did as part of the application. And there's about $400,000 in all the preliminary studies and the initial design engineering. So that part is fully funded. What is not funded currently is taking it from River Road and then extending all the way to Dundee. But we have talked, Kat and I and Don and Casey, about making another submittal to the ODOT Community Pathways Program and seeing if we can get funded again to complete a second phase that would get us potentially all the way to Dundee.
So at this point, there isn't necessarily a projected time for completion since the funding isn't fully secured for all phases, correct?
To reach Dundee, correct. But in order to provide this connectivity to the area that's redeveloping around the mill, we'll have that fully funded as of that grant funding that we received from ODOT.
Okay.
And I see Justin has his hand up.
Yeah, Paul, between the current construction cost climate and then ODOT grants for these types of projects being sort of notoriously under budgeted,
Yeah.
what's the confidence level that the available dollars at 2.6 million will be able to get this done without some additional funding being needed and potentially pretty significant dollars?
Yeah, good question, Justin. It is a very dynamic construction cost market right now. And unfortunately, the general direction of that is up right now. So we will know a lot more once we get through 30% design. So currently, the projected structure is going to be a concrete girder construction. It's essentially the same type of construction as ODOT used for the vehicular bridge. And we haven't encountered any particularly challenging ground conditions other than these wood chips that are in the soil by where our west bridge abutment is proposed. There's fairly straightforward workarounds for dealing with that. We're looking initially to just extend the bridge a little bit longer so that we don't have those difficult ground conditions. So currently I'd say I'm reasonably confident that we're going to be close with our $2.6 million total funding. Let me tell you, let me come back in the spring when we've gotten through 30% and see and share what our cost estimate is at that point. But we'll know what our foundation conditions are going to be. We should have a much better cost for the bridge structure itself. And those are the two major costs for the project. So in a few months, I'll have a much more confident ability to respond to your question.
And then a follow-up to that is throughout the remainder of the trail going to Dundee, I don't know that you're necessarily doing a ton with that right now, of course, but what do you know are the most significant gaps in that last section of the trail all the way to Dundee that prevents this whole trail from being shovel ready? Are there like top two gaps, and what are the issues there to make them be shovel ready?
Yeah, another good question. The number one concern is the crossing of Shahalam Creek. So that's going to be, so if we're at roughly 600 feet for the crossing of Hess Creek, I think it's going to be closer to 800 feet to get across the Chehalem Creek floodplain. So that's a very large structure and big piece of cost. I think in terms of the right of way, we're good all the way to 8th in Dundee. There'll need to be some coordination with the city in order to route that in a way that works with their current transportation plans. But this concept has been around for a while. So I don't see any major obstacles with that, but yeah, we'll need to confirm that that alignment works for the city and, you know, make whatever adjustments are necessary to work with their plans. And I
Thanks.
see Quentin's got his hand up.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the grant agreement, and it says here that the project completion is to be spring 2024. Is that still what you guys have?
Yes, we intend to start construction in summer of 2023 and be complete by spring of 2024.
I have a question. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hear me okay? Yeah, Marty Peters here. With this funding, does that include other things like along the trail, like landscaping, signs, artwork, noise abatement, kind of
Yeah,
things outside the trail, or no?
Yeah, we don't have currently plans for artwork or noise abatement. So part of how we're dealing with that is that the as you might have been able to determine from the profile, we're actually going to be slightly below the highway bridge. And so that Jersey barrier that runs along the north edge of the current vehicular bridge will help shield some of the sound that comes off of that. We've walked along, you know, as part of our field work, and it's quite noisy, as I'm sure all of you can appreciate. And so having the bridge located below there, you can just imagine how the sound is sort of refracted mostly above the existing structure. So there is some noise attenuation. It is noticeably quieter down below, but we won't have perfect sound attenuation, which you can't have a perfect sound attenuation, but it wouldn't be as good if we had, say, accounted for sound walls. But my feeling is that it's a very nice experience along the Hess Creek floodplain, and I believe that people won't feel like the noise coming off the highway is offensive.
One thing we had actually talked about in our last meeting was just throwing out the idea of if the final name is going to be Newberg Dundee Bypass Trail, or if you guys would be open to other naming ideas.
I mean, that's up to Kat and Casey and Don, but personally, I'm fine with another name for it. So yeah, I don't see any issues that I'm aware of, but Kat's probably the definitive person about that.
Well, I'll just chime in. There was a deliberate naming strategy, naming the places and naming those as a bridge between the trail as a bridge between them significantly can increase our likelihood of success on grant applications. That's specifically why we did that.
And just to echo Kat's point, one of the comments that we got from ODOT after being selected was that this project really exemplifies the goals of the Community Pathways program. So to Kat's point, yes, there was that was part of our strategy in terms of the name of this. So the key link was that this was building on infrastructure that ODOT had already partially developed. And it was a very cooperative venture going all the way back to our coordination with ODOT prior to the construction of the bypass. The reason that that 12-foot concrete path is there is because of the coordination that we had with ODOT, as well as the way they graded the access road to make sure that it met ADA compliance. So yes, what Kat's saying is entirely true and part of a long-term strategy about getting funding for the project. And Quentin, is your hand back up or did it just didn't go down?
Yeah, have you thought about, are you planning to, or would you be open to possibly, like you said, this seems like a good model for the grant program. Have you thought about capturing the work that goes into it through video or project updates through a website or something that we could show to the community that, hey, this is the work that goes into developing, you know, such robust trail systems? Has that been something that between you and Kat have talked about?
You know, frankly, we haven't. I think it's a great idea. But we've been busy actually doing the project rather than, you know, thinking of a good way to find more grant opportunities or to help other, you know, communities with grant opportunities. So I appreciate the suggestion.
Yeah, and I'll chime in again. That's a very welcome idea. That's something that we would do work on internally once we got to that stage, but I'd be very enthusiastically welcome if that's something that the committee wants to take on in some way, shape, or form and partner with us in that. That would be just great.
Anything else?
Hi, Matt Dolphin. I have a question just about funding. We've heard a lot of numbers bounced around over the past couple months. So just to recap, phase one, the $2.2 million for phase one is entirely taken care of. What's left with phase two? What is your estimated cost and how can we possibly help in that area?
Yeah, good question. So we currently don't have a cost estimate for phase two because we did some very preliminary work probably 6 or 7 years ago. And so those cost estimates are very dated at this point. So we would need to take another look at those quantities that we had and then just run some more current cost information through that spreadsheet. I don't recall off the top of my head what the numbers were for the second phase, so I won't shoot from the hip tonight. But I would imagine probably closer to $4 million for that next phase. I would say probably in the $4 to $5 million range to complete all the way to Dundee. But that, again, that's just shooting from the hip a little bit.
In a follow-up to that, in regard to us providing some support and help in getting that $4 to $5 million, I'm not specifically familiar with the intricacies of the ODOT Community Pathway grant program. How does that typically work? I mean, it sounds like you're aiming toward that grant. How much of it would be taken care of by the grant and how much would we need to find within the community?
Yeah, good question. The requirement is for a 20% match by the entity that's funded. So that's where that $800,000 in the current budget comes from. So 80% of that next phase. So, you know, it would be asking for, say it was $4 million, just to keep the math simple. 80% of that would be $3.2 million that we'd be asking ODOT for. And then the rest of that would come from CPRD. So in terms of going forward, the program is relatively new, Community Pathways. So I think having the success that we had with phase one puts us in really good position to submit. There's going to be another round opening up, I believe, starting in July. So the time to start thinking about that is now. Begin the planning for that. So we could use your support. Kat was very successful in going around and getting letters of support from the city of Newberg, from people in Dundee, from Casey Kula on Yamhill County Council, and Kat can fill in all the people that she approached. But we would definitely want to reach out to more people in Dundee for the second phase of the project. And I'm sure all of you have, or many of you have connections in the community of Dundee as well.
And when you say you're looking for people in Dundee, what are the types of contacts or individuals that you'd be looking for letters of support from?
Yeah, certainly people who are connected to, like who might be commissioners or city council members in Dundee who are supportive of trails and recreation programs. The other piece of this that was a big factor with the award from ODOT to CPRD was that the connection, not just for recreation, but for people to get to educational facilities like PCC, Newberg, the ability potentially for someone to get to Providence, Newberg, the ability for someone to get to Fred Meyer and that whole complex there by walking or by bicycle was a big attraction. So pulling in people who understand, multimodal transportation and not just vehicular transportation would be really helpful in your reach out. So yeah, that's a really good question. And that would be just off the top of the head, my thinking that way. I can give it some more thought and get together with Kat and we can prepare a list of the types of connections that would be helpful going forward.
Sure. And to follow up, I also serve on the Parks Committee for Dundee. So if that's something that I could help and bring to that committee, I'd be happy to do that.
That would be great. Yes.
And do you have examples of previous letters of support? Is that something where we would give someone kind of a template of, hey, this is something to get you started. Would you mind signing your name on this sort of thing?
We certainly do. And we is the royal we, and by which I mean Kat.
Are there any other questions or discussion while we still have Paul here?
I just want to say thanks for all of your hard work and thanks for taking the time to share with us what's going on. We really appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome. It's been a real pleasure to work on this project with Kat and Casey and Don and to meet all of you tonight. So yeah, we look forward to a successful implementation of this bridge and looking forward to continuing into phase 2.
Very exciting. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Paul. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Kat. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Okay, so now we're gonna jump in quickly to discussion on meeting and minutes format. So this is something that I've been learning as we get this developed. So Kat did let me know after speaking with the CPRD attorney, we actually do not have to follow the book from the Department of Justice on public meetings. So we get to relax a little bit on our meeting format. We don't have to have a quorum for any movements that we want to move forward with action. Obviously, we're still going to try and keep things organized and effective in our meetings, but that gives us a little bit of leverage to move things forward, especially with such a big committee of 17 people. We want to make sure that we don't hit stalemates based on participation. The other thing I wanted to ask, we're still kind of figuring out our minutes format. And something that I was wondering, I serve on the Parks Committee, and I know for those meeting minutes, it's more conversational, in-depth notes. And we had talked to Kat as there is a transcription format option potentially within Zoom that we could utilize. And Aaron might speak to this as well, but I'm kind of wondering as a committee, what do we see as being helpful? Obviously, we have the recorded Zoom meetings that anyone can go online and they can review the meeting in that way. I know it's a lot quicker and easier to read minutes than it is to watch an hour or longer than an hour-long meeting. So I was just kind of curious from people's perspective on other committees they serve on or their preference, if we just want it to be a quick bullet point on action items, or if we want it to be more of a thorough conversational. If you missed the meeting, you could go back and get a sense of what we talked about. So just kind of discussion around that is what I'm looking for.
First time I'm happy with bullet points, and then if you miss a meeting, to review it, but yeah, my attention does bullet points, not paragraphs.
Second.
I like the format of the bullet point minutes, but I do think a transcript might also be helpful if it's fairly easy to do that.
And Kat, I don't know if you had a chance to talk with the IT folks to know.
Yeah, I did mention it to our IT person that he's not familiar with that, but said he will look into it and see if it's a possibility.
Any other discussion from the, I see a hand up, 2 hands up, but I can't read the names from here. I know one's Quentin and one's Brian. Okay, so Quentin, you can go first.
Yeah, I mean, just commenting on what you guys were talking about, the closed captioning through Zoom, I think is a free feature, and it does provide a transcript file that you can export, and it's pretty easy. I've used it before, but I do like looking at the current minutes. I like the bullet point format, and just the fact that like any numbers or figures or specific comments from committee members is, as long as that's there in the bullet points, I don't see any issue with our current format.
Brian?
Yeah, and I was just going to say, as somebody who was trying to catch up on the goings on, looking at past meeting minutes, like I think the availability of the Zoom meetings is awesome, and a transcript would be awesome, but it'd be nice to have like, right, not a lot, but maybe 2 or 3 sentences that summarize up the bullets, because coming in, as an outsider, it's very hard to interpret what it means. But I think like just enough to know that like, oh, that sounds interesting. I'm going to go look at the Zoom transcript, or the, either watch the meeting or look at the transcripts, but still same deal, like keep it to a page. It doesn't need to be a ton more, in my opinion.
Erin?
So I am really trying to make sure I get a lot of things down. It's going to be very hard to participate with putting down a lot of information. And I mean, we're trying to find a balance, because I don't want to spend hours reviewing our meetings. I'm going to try, so I'm trying different formats. We'll see what we like the best. I have gotten a lot down in this meeting, but sort of a combination of that. And for people that want to go more in depth, it would be really helpful if we had a transcript, I think, because, people could kind of skim that. I can't really capture it all, even when I'm not participating, because I can't type that fast. That's just my input.
And to follow up on that, Erin, part of the discussion, I would love to have a way that you could actually participate. And I know by being the secretary and taking the minutes as the meeting is going, it makes that nearly impossible for you. So that was one thought with the transcript, is if it made it easier for you to be able to participate and still get content out on the meetings, that might be a compromise. But it sounds like most people in the group did not want to have the lengthy text. They would prefer bullets. Does that summarize things, or is there any other discussion, Matt?
Just want to share something I learned about minutes within one of the nonprofits I work with, thinking of minutes in layers. So first layer is what action was decided upon. The next layer is what action and why. And then it jumps to level 3, and that's a big jump. In addition to what action and why, what things were considered but decided against. And then you can go even to more detail at the next level. So, I think for me, a level 1 or 2 is fine. I don't know that we need to have a full-on, multiple paragraphs of all the things that we discussed that we didn't decide on.
And Erin, how are you feeling around this?
I will just say that once we're more structured, it's been getting easier and easier. From the beginning, we didn't have an agenda at all. The agenda is very helpful. I can copy and paste that and then add below, and now we're on track with that. And I think that the more robust the agenda can be to start, that's also helpful. And as we become more structured in regards to that, I think it will be much easier. I'm finding it easier each time. And I think going back and adding maybe some, bold or highlights here and there, I'm trying to put things in lists. I think it will become easier. I think it's also been confusing because we haven't really had a direction in some of the meetings. And so there isn't, it's been kind of just general discussion about certain things. And so when we're talking about, when Matt's mentioning like what action was decided upon and why, and that hasn't always been super apparent. But I think that will become clearer as we move forward.
Sure. And you will notice I have updated the agenda format. So there are Roman numerals now to go with the agenda items. So hopefully that helps organize things going forward as well.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I have a comment as someone who's on the outside trying to catch up.
Can you guys hear?
The full transcript has the control app, which is fine. How
do I do that?
And actually is extremely valuable to somebody who doesn't have a clue and is looking for specific pieces.
Right. So I don't know if you guys heard that, but it was mentioned that with the transcript, there's a Control F function where you can search by keywords, and that can be really helpful to go through and find specific things that were talked about or discussed or actions. And within our Google Docs, I'm sure that's an option as well to search by keywords. Obviously, if it's bullet points, it wouldn't be as necessary. And I know part of it for me, since I missed this first several meetings of our committee, for me, looking at the bullet points was not enough information for me to really get a sense of what happened and what we needed moving forward. Which now hopefully I don't miss all those meetings. And at the time, I did not have the time to go back and review the Zoom meetings, to be personally honest. So I just try to think, I mean, perhaps, yes, if we get more organized bullets, and it will just have to be on the onus of whoever misses the meetings to go back and watch those Zoom meetings. Because so far our participation has not been stellar from the looks of it. And so I do worry about people falling off if they can't keep up with what we're discussing and what the content is of meetings. And I want to make sure that people can be involved and participate going forward, even if life happens and they have to miss a meeting. So as long as, I guess, we just have that structured and the expectation is there, and then people should all be on the same page of how to catch up and pick up the details before the next meeting. Okay, so I'm going to jump to the next thing, because I think that was enough discussion on minutes, and I think that might be a little bit of a moving target at first. If we get through the next few meetings and realize, okay, something isn't working, or there's something we could do better, try and keep that in the back of our minds, that if we see something in other groups that we're a part of that might help us to organize our agenda or our minutes, I am open to feedback on the agenda. So definitely let me know if there's something that would make that work more efficiently for our group. The next thing I wanted to point out, tracking and organization of community volunteer interest and outreach. For those of you that are on the computer, I did put a link in the agenda. For others, hopefully you had a chance to look before we came, but on that initial spreadsheet that was set up for trail members, I set up an additional tab on there for community interest. I don't know if any of you guys have been in contact with people. I'm sure some of you have, but these are a few people that have already connected with our committee and offered to help and be involved. And so I started just kind of a basic spreadsheet of the types of details that we want to keep track of for those individuals. I know we're not to a point yet of looking for volunteers and people to promote or fundraise or any of that, but I think the more robust we can have this list, so that when we get to that point, we have people to reach out to. Because if they're actively reaching out to us and interested, we want to capture that in some way. And I think this would be an organized way to be able to capture that. So any of us can go on and make edits and additions. And so I'd say just look at it. And if you can think of something that perhaps I didn't have top of mind, if we need to add additional columns, certain things we want to have required, certain things are optional. But I just want to make sure we have a clear system that everybody can use to keep track of that. I don't know if there's any questions or discussion on that. Okay, so that's there. Reach out if you need it. Now we're gonna move on to Matt to talk about discussion on group structure and expectations.
Okay, I'm happy to present a couple ideas first and then make a motion, or I can make a motion and then we can have discussion. I can make my presentation part of that, however you'd like.
You already shared a great amount of content that hopefully everyone had a chance to review. So I'd say let's start with action, and if we need to go in reverse and discuss more, we can go backwards.
Okay, then I've got a motion. And I could read that and I'll give you a copy. That sound good?
Sure.
Okay.
Brian, you have your.
You've got slides ready just.
Mhm.
Yeah, I guess, can we briefly go through those just real quick? Because I think that'll help.
Yeah.
Who did not get a chance to read through the email? Just so I know, if everyone's read, then I'll make it very brief. No one wants to speak up, or
I think I saw
everyone's
one
been
hand
very
go up.
diligent students have done their homework. So, I've been thinking about a lot about our purpose. We've had a lot of discussions about our purpose and direction and how we're going to split up. And I don't know, Kat, can they see those or not?
Yeah, can you all see the first slide there?
I don't see it.
Bam, says I am screen sharing. Folks, can you all see the screen, a path forward?
I'm able to.
Okay, great. But we can't see here. There it is. So yeah, just thinking about how we've been at some crossroads here as how to divide. We're almost like we're at a trailhead, and we're just trying to find our direction and how we're going to get there. So I think it's one of the things that wasn't in what I sent out was clarifying our purpose. And I'm not going to make a motion on that, but I do want us to kind of give us some things to chew on. In the next slide. One of the things that was in our application to be committee members was that we were to provide recommendations to the board of directors regarding new and developing trails and pathways, and then went on and on about all the different types of pathways. There's a little bit in there about creating a volunteer group. But I would propose our next purpose there, that we expand it slightly and push that back to the board, that we're to provide recommendations and support to CPRD regarding trails. Sorry about that. As well as the concept that those trails, I think one more before that, that those trails are within the CPRD or the Heritage Trail System and connecting to, because if a trail is just isolated, it's of much lower value than one that it's networked with other trail systems. So that's something to chew on. I'm not going to make a formal motion on that at this point unless someone else wants to, but I do think we need to kind of look at our purpose as part of this. The other thing is, where do ideas come from? And I addressed this quite a bit in my email. I think they can come from anywhere. And so we want to be open and allow a free flow of those ideas to the entire group so that we can all work on those and think about those and add to them. Next. One of those places where we find ideas is in this Shahalam Heritage Trail Plan, which is about 120 pages of work that was done in 2010. A lot of it by Jim McMaster was involved in that, but there's a whole group, including some consultants that did some feasibility studies. So this lays out a number of different trails. Some other places we can look are connecting with our neighbors, connecting with the city, connecting with the county. There are all kinds of trail plans and transportation plans that we can piggyback on so we're not reinventing the wheel. So I want to encourage us all to dig into those plans. It's a lot of reading. It's a lot of homework. And so I think part of what we want to do is split some of that work up so that we can figure out what trail ideas are already out there. And then of course, we've got new ideas like Alan's trail to the Abbey, Marty's trail up to Chehalem Mountain. Those should all be included into the mix. And I just wanted to show, this is part of that Chehalem Trail plan, which shows the CPRD district in the middle, connecting out to the neighbors somehow. And really, and the other trails that are in our area.
Can I just interrupt really quick? Sorry, this is Justin, and maybe it's just me. Are these slides supposed to be moving? They're not moving on my screen.
Oh, really?
So hate to be a buzzkill there. But
It's not just you.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's not moving on mine either.
okay.
How about now?
Sorry.
Oh, there we go.
Better? All right. And I'll get these out to the group if you guys want to review them as well. But this is a map of proposed trails. And the definition of trails by this strategic planning group is quite broad. It includes both on-street and off-street. So I personally think that this should be a starting point. We should be breaking up this plan, seeing what has been accomplished and what hasn't, and then moving from there. And next. I sent this out a little bit earlier as well. This is the Oregon Trail Commission's Ready, Set, Plan Guide, which I think can serve as a handbook for our work. In that book, they outline this trail project life cycle, and it's a messy process. It's not linear. So there's public input that's needed in multiple places. Feasibility studies are needed, possibly in multiple places. But it's quite an involved process. And so I think we want to have a flexible structure. Go ahead, Kat, next. One of the things we heard, I think, through all of our discussions is that a successful proposal to the Parks and Rec Board is going to include a well-defined trail plan, including a detailed corridor and alternatives, funding mechanisms, and then broad community support. And so my proposal is, go ahead, Kat. My proposal is that we create 3 different groups, one for community engagement, one for funding, and one for planning and all the other details until we find that we need some additional groups. And so the process really is that anybody can come to this committee with a trail idea. Those trail ideas are heard by everybody, and we decide whether we're going to move forward with it and how we're going to move forward with it. And most likely that's going to be investigating with the community. Do we want to support this? It's going to be looking at different funding sources and then planning out specific corridors for the trails. And once we all are in agreement that we've got what we think is a pretty good proposal, then we shoot it off to the board for their approval. And then they could kick it back with some recommendations or ask for some support from the volunteers and people who are engaging. So that's the overall process that I envision. And then go ahead, next tab. One of the things that I noticed in the Heritage Trail System plan is that it lists about 80 miles or so of trails. And so in addition to kind of getting clear on a purpose, and this is something to chew on, I think it's pretty realistic or reasonable, given that strategic plan, that our goal needs to be that we're trying to develop over 100 miles of trails in our community to connect it. We're well on our way, taking into account ODOT, the bypass trail. We're well on our way, considering maybe some other additional projects that are outside of our district and how we're going to support those. But just something to chew on as far as a metric that we're trying to shoot for. But with that, any questions on that so far, or any questions on what I sent out via email? Okay. Well, then my motion is that we create an engagement work group, a funding work group, and a planning work group, and that the chair would fill those positions with at least 3 people and appoint a temporary chair to each one of those. And that each working group would then schedule a meeting to select their permanent chair and discuss what actions they can take and report back to the group.
I second.
Sorry, I was writing notes. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, moved and approved that we have some more structures for subcommittees. Let's see what time it is. Okay. So I do not think we have time to move forward to actually establish who is in each of those groups tonight if we want to be able to participate in the Angeles West Sider Trail meeting. So I'm gonna table that until the next meeting. And that will also give everybody to kind of look this over, think it over, because I'm hoping that people can self-select for those. People know their own skills and interests, and so I'm hoping that when we meet next time, people can volunteer for the groups that they think they would be best fit in, rather than me assigning.
So are we gonna scrap the idea of choosing specific trails you want to be a part of and just go to, so just forget all that, like in that column in my spreadsheet, I can just get rid of that column?
Yeah, I mean, that's my personal, after reviewing everything with this strategic plan that has 80+ miles of trails, if we split up into different groups, we are each going to be working on multiple trails within that plan, and we'll be a committee of one essentially. Because, I mean, splitting up a group of 17 even on 100 miles of trail, I'm not sure that that's going to work long-term. And then we start duplicating efforts. So that trail needs funding. It needs a community that's engaged. It needs a plan. But we could be developing some talent within this committee to do those functions for every trail.
And I think you keep it because then you bring it to us and we decide if we want to work on it, and then it goes through those committees, right? That's the idea, is you bring specific trail ideas in, we decide if we want to run it through the various committees.
And I think it's great to keep it in the spreadsheet, because I think it's helpful for us to know what members are interested in, what trails they're passionate about, and what projects they're passionate about. Yes, we're gonna add another column for which subcommittee people are in. And I know that was our next agenda item, so that actually lends well into that. We want to make sure that everybody goes in and actually fills in their information on that trail members spreadsheet that's in our shared Google Drive. There is a tab called committee member interest. I see that some people have gone in and started to fill that out. Not everybody has yet. So if you can please make sure that you have that done before our next meeting. And when we add the new column, we can also start deciding from there how it looks people to be distributed for those different subcommittees.
Not saying I want to be part of more than one, but could a person be part of more than one subcommittee?
Well, and that's one question I have with the subcommittees. Are we still gonna have a meeting where we meet as a whole committee? And then those would be additional meetings aside from that? I would assume is how that would work, or are we just splitting into those 3 work groups and meeting?
I think at least for now, we should do it that way. We may find that that's overkill, and then we could mix, this group, or maybe make it less frequent. That'd be my recommendation.
Excuse me, Jill, Quentin and Justin Vandergans approve it.
Okay, Quentin?
Yeah, to that point, maybe it's a matter of an idea comes into the committee and then it gets sent to, say, the planning, and then they look at a feasibility study if you're going to go on that cute little trail diagram that Matt showed us. And then it comes back to the committee and says, hey, here's our recommendation. The whole committee here says, hey, we like this, sends it to the board. And maybe at that point, the board says, hey, this is cool, we want to make this a priority, send it back to us. And then the community engagement and the funding work groups at that point would start working on that specific project, knowing that it has the blessing from the board. And the original comment I was going to make, because you sparked that interest there, was on the current spreadsheet, we already have the activity interest column, and those already kind of align what people are putting in there to those 3 work groups. So maybe between now and the next meeting, since we don't have the time to discuss it, maybe folks could put in their interest as to what committee they're looking at in that category, or maybe a new column, I don't know.
Yeah, I think initially we had a bunch of different topics, and so I had added that in there, but now that we've honed it down, we can easily transition that. And those are kind of the sub things within those anyways. Yeah, I'll talk to Cindy here and see, because in some ways I think it could be good still to have the drilled down details. So within each subcommittee, you're gonna have people that have certain expertise. So whether it's specifically with funding or volunteering, those could be two totally different skill sets for someone who is on the engagement working group. So if it's someone who can do grant writing as opposed to someone who can organize volunteers for trail maintenance or cleanup, those are kind of different tasks within that. Okay. So yeah, if we can fill those out, that'd be great. We will add a column, and again, this is a working document as well. So as we get going and organizing ourselves, if it's more information than we need, we can trim it down. If there's more details we'd like to see. But I do agree. Oh, Justin, go ahead.
Yeah, maybe this is a question for Kat. Don Clements came and visited our committee a couple of meetings ago, and I had left that meeting after he had spoken with us with feeling like he had some pretty clear direction that he had extended to us and kind of a clear vision for what he expected of this group. And I was wondering if it would be possible for him to maybe every couple of meetings come back to participate just as a check-in, see what we're doing, provide feedback, guidance. This makes sense. This, don't worry about that. Would that be possible?
I think so, Justin. Don Clemens is actually in the room.
In the house.
Oh,
Yes, unsolicited, unexpected. He is right here.
Don, you owe me $20 for setting you up there.
I'm very pleased with what's going on. I think you guys are hitting it out of the park. So it's good job.
And Quentin, I do agree to touch on what you're commenting on. I do think these working groups are truly that. When we have something come to our committee that needs to be worked through the chain of command, that's when you activate those working groups and set them into play. So for now, please, on your calendars, put our next meeting, February, the second Wednesday, as always. So that is going to be the 9th of February. We will meet as a full committee again. And unless there are any other questions or concerns, if so, speak up now or forever hold your peace. Okay, so we're going to quickly just conclude the meeting. That way we can jump into the other meeting for anyone that wants to participate. For those that are remote, we're going to click off. You're welcome to join. If you do not have the link, I included it in the agenda. So you can quickly jump through that and it has all the details you should need. We're going to log off and log into the other one.